On this episode of Torah Tuesday, we talk about the minor festival of Lag BaOmer, the number 33, and what it means for us today. Hey, shalom everyone, and welcome to another episode of Torah Tuesday, episode 8 of Torah Tuesday, where we take your questions, where we take different topics, and we discuss them here every week and share them on this channel. We invite you to participate in the discussion, ask us questions on YouTube, Facebook, in the comments below, and use the hashtag Torah Tuesday. So I want to get right into it. This week's lesson is a quicker lesson this week. Hopefully, I kind of tend to always say that it's going to be a quicker lesson, and then I can't seem to shut up. So we're going to try to make it quick. I've got a 4:30 meeting, and I wanted to take an opportunity to just discuss these things with you and share some thoughts, very, very, very important thoughts in this week's Torah Tuesday. So we have an interesting minor festival this week. We have what's called Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is during the counting of the Omer, obviously, BaOmer, the counting of the Omer or the Omer. Lag is the number 33. So remember, in Hebrew, every letter is also a number. So we have the Gimel, which is 3, and the Lamed is 30. So we have 33, Lag BaOmer. And so this Wednesday evening, so tomorrow night going into Thursday, is the minor celebration of Lag BaOmer. And so in many communities it's a festive celebration. It's not, in many cases widely celebrated, but I believe it is definitely worth mentioning. The first time it's mentioned actually is in the 13th century. And I think we should take note, because there's some things that occurred even during the times of the Messiah, or after Messiah really, but around this whole 70 CE time frame or AD time frame that occurred. There was a gentleman that wrote about this. He's a Talmudist Meir, in Tractate Yevamot 62b, and he refers to this time of Lag BaOmer and how it coincides with Rabbi Akiva and his 24,000 students that died. So Rabbi Akiva, post-Messiah, came on scene and was a very learned, very influential rabbi in the writings of Israel in the times of the Jewish people. And so he rose up, and 24,000 of his students, he had a very strong, almost militaristic presence with his students, and they rose up against the status quo, and they rose up against many of the things that were going on in the times of early first century Judaism. And he proclaimed himself as Messiah of Israel. He said that he was the Messiah. And so 24,000 of his students, or many of his students, rose up. And so 24,000 of them, which was the majority, they rose up against the powers that be. There was a revolt that began during that time. And on the day of Lag BaOmer, that's written historically, that on the day of Lag BaOmer, which is tomorrow evening, again, Wednesday night to Thursday this year, 24,000 of his students were struck with a plague, and all of them died. Akiva was left with only 5 of his students. And so it's an interesting holiday, because though it began with, you can say, a sad commemoration of this time, it also gave birth to one of the most deep writings within Judaism, which is the Zohar. Was written by a sage, a rabbi, let's see, where did I lost his name? By Bar Yochai, of course, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And so it's said that he's the greatest teacher of Torah, ever in his generation, and supposedly was the author of the Zohar. And so it's interesting how in many cases, we see tragedies, and out of tragedies come life, and tragedies come celebration. And so when we look at this concept of why does this occurrence fall in the counting of the Omer, so I definitely believe that there's no coincidences. I believe for sure that these things have occurred for a reason, to teach us something. Everything happens for a reason. From the very beginning, it's all here as a pattern to teach us something very important. And so there's a couple things that I'd like to touch on quickly in reference to this occurrence. And the first is a theme that continually repeats all through the scriptures. It repeats all through our Torah portions. We talked about it last week in last week's Torah Tuesday. I'm going to talk about it again this week, and it occurs all the time throughout the scriptures. And it is one of the main topics that Messiah addresses over and over and over again in the scriptures. And so it's said that the reason why God struck Rabbi Akiva's students with the plague and that 24,000 of them died was because they did not treat each other with respect. They did not treat their fellow brothers and citizens of Israel and each other with respect, with the proper love. And so it ties in again this whole concept of how can you say you love the God you don't see if you don't love the person that you do see, or the one that you do see. So it's a very important lesson for us that I believe the Lord is telling us to stop. So wherever you're at, right where you're at, take this as the Lord saying stop for a minute. Like you're counting the Omer, we're going up. We've got 17 more days as of Lake Nona. If we're counting from Lake Nona forward, 17 days, we're on day like 19 as we're counting forward, and or 19 more days. And so as we count these days, one of the things that the sages say, especially the mystics, about Lake Nona is that this 33 is the 5th day of the 5th week of the counting of the Omer, and that the 5th day of the 5th week of the counting of the Omer is teaching us, or it corresponds, because every week corresponds to something different, and that the 5th week corresponds to his splendor, and the splendor within the splendor. And so we get so consumed with the things that God does for us, and we see the things that the Lord does for us. And how many times do we marvel at his splendor? Well, we marvel at his splendor when we see the things he does, when he appears in our lives, when his splendor appears in our lives, and out of nowhere, when there's no money in the bank and there's no food on the table, and all of a sudden a check appears in the mail, or we're in need, the car's broken down, and next thing you know, a mechanic shows up and fixes your car for free, or all these different just wow moments. And that's kind of in those moments when we look up and go, wow, we see the splendor. So this concept of them receiving this plague at this time shows that because we're supposed to be being refined during this time of the counting of the Omer, counting up to ascend the mountain. And part of our refinement process and this concept of being refined is not about knowledge. Like showing the splendor of our King is not about learning per se as it is doing. And so taking knowledge and learning should be something that transforms us and turns us into those vessels that then extend that wow factor to others. So the lesson of this is should be something that we then take and inventory our life in this very moment and say, am I really giving of myself to be there for my brothers and sisters, for those that need me, for my neighbor, for people at work, for the needy person down the street? Like, am I only being religious for my own piousness, for my own ego? Because we have a religious ego, it makes us feel better when we feel clean, when we feel that we've done our part to cleanse ourselves and do the right things, feel better of ourselves. And that's not what following the Eternal One is all about. That's not what the Messiah's teachings are all about, or the Torah is at all. It's about being transformed into the likeness of our King, and then demonstrating that likeness to those that are around us. And so we can't say that we're being transformed while harboring thoughts, while harboring guilt, while thinking things that we shouldn't be thinking or saying things that we shouldn't be saying. And so this time of the counting of the Omer, I think that this occurrence happened, and it's in our history books to show us that no matter how pious we think we are, how learned we think we are, how religious, how holy, and all these things. And we even talked about holiness last week, right? And what Kedusha really is, and that the Lord doesn't see Kedusha as anyone in individually, but together as a community, meaning that when we work together, when we treat each other with holiness, when we treat each other in a way that his scriptures tell us to treat each other, that is when he sees holiness, when we truly love our neighbors as ourselves. And so he gives us this lesson, I believe, during this counting of the Omer, to really stop and inventory ourselves, and see really our speech, our thoughts, our actions. Is this something that is truly, because it's that, right? It's those things that are really leading us to the top of the mountain. Like, you can learn as much as you want. You can have as much head knowledge as you want. But if that is not transforming you into the likeness of the Messiah, if that is not transforming you, and taking you out into the world and taking the wow factor to people's lives where you are being used as that vessel, it's like we can get caught up, in always wanting to receive the wow factor, the blessings, the handouts, it's nice for blessings to fall from heavens. It's nice to those things. But you know what? Israel got stuck in that journey as well. Remember? They got stuck in the desert, and they got stuck on the manna and the quail, and they got stuck on the miracles happening in the desert, and they lost the purpose. They lost the vision, which was the Holy Land, which was actually receiving the inheritance, walking into the inheritance and taking it because it was given to them. It was a gift. And so second thing that I would just love to touch on is, the Messiah. Akiva proclaimed himself as Messiah. And what Messiah are you following? There's many different ways, and there's a lot of different ways to carve up that question. And it's not meant for you to point the finger, and many will say, well, yeah, Christianity or these people or that people. And sure, there's a lot of errors in much of the way Messiah is presented out of his Jewish context in the scriptures. But even more than that, many things in our lives can turn into a Messiah. What is your calling? What is your guide? Where is your kavanah? Where's your heart? Where is it focused? And are you putting things, are you following your own interpretation of what it means to be Messiah-like? Because that can also affect, this concept of Akiva professing himself to be Mashiach is, many times we think we've got it figured out. And are we truly walking in the likeness of our Messiah? Or do we need to stop, and let's not wait for the plagues, right? Let's not wait until he has to stop us. It's important that he gives us these days and these times, because this is the one area, once again, that we fail the most is in each other, is in truly demonstrating the likeness of the Messiah. And so I encourage you that during this time and during Lake BaOmer, that you would take this lesson to stop and think and stop and meditate. If you need to go out and repair and make tikkun and fix relationships and address mistakes that you've made along the way, I encourage you to do that. So I pray you have a great week. I pray this has been a blessing to you, and we'll see you next week. Shalom.